Have you ever caught yourself saying, no worries? Well, I'm Steph.
And I'm Steph, and we have some worries. Hi, everyone. I'm Steph with an F.
And I'm Steph with a PH, and welcome back to Some Worries, the podcast brought to you by two anxious bitches.
Hang out with us today while we talk about getting older in today's episode. Am I too old for this? So, Steph, how do you feel about getting older?
How do I feel? Um, I feel achier than I used to be.
Yes.
I feel it in my joints, feel it in my
Mm-hmm.
bones.
Yep.
It's so interesting that we're talking about this topic because there are definitely going to be people watching who are older than us and people who are younger
Mm-hmm.
than us, and they're like going to have opinions about us talking about this topic. So if you're out there and you're like, you are too young to be talking about this, or you're too old to be talking about this, yeah, you're probably right. But we're doing it anyway because it's our podcast. So
We talk about whatever we want to. I'm going to
that's right.
quote the Trixie and Katya YouTube show.
That's right. We are just blatantly stealing from them. Yep. But I mean, the topic is something that everybody has to deal with at some point. Like everybody gets older, like we're mortal. That's how things work, unless you're a vampire and you're listening. Uh,
If you
like
are, hit me up.
hit us
Okay.
up. Yeah. But otherwise, I think I have such a mixed approach to it. I mean, I think definitely I'm not kidding when I say that I ache more than I used to. And I think if I don't move my body, it's worse. So I've reached
Hmm.
a point in my life where, when I was younger, I could get away with not really going to the gym, not really like going out for walks, and probably feel kind of okay. And now I'm like, if I don't go for a walk at least every like day or two, there will be a morning where I'll just like try to get out of bed and it's like everything creaks, and I'm like, oh yeah, I really gotta like move my body and I gotta stretch. And so I've really like incorporated more movement into my body as I've gotten older, and I feel like that's helped me a lot.
Hmm.
So it's like there's these changes you have to make. There's also things that I love about being older because I think I've always been old in my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to like be in my 30s and to be at an age where I can just be the 30-year-old I've always been, like in my heart and soul. Because when you're younger, it can be harder to connect with other people if they're just in a very different headspace than you are. And I definitely felt that when I was like in my teens and my 20s. I was never really a person who liked to go out to big parties, and like I was never into drinking and things like that. And like it's fine if that's what you're into when you're in your 20s. It's cool, or whenever. But it was just not my jam. And so it would be hard to find people who like would want to go hang out with me at the library or something. Like that was always harder. But when you're in your 30s, people are down for that. They're like, oh, you just want to grab a cup of tea and talk about our days? Yes, I'm dying for some human interaction. Let's go do it. Like, because it's so
Hmm.
hard to like connect with people as you get older. I don't know. Do you find that it's hard to like make friends and like meet new people kind of in this age group that we're in right now? Or is that just me? I feel like it's so hard.
Well, first, I just want to say that I can't believe that we waited until episode 6 for me to say that we're the same person because you and I are very similar people overall, but I can't believe I haven't said it until now. Basically, I just want to ditto everything you just said because same.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, it is really hard to make friends. I think also we're in a pandemic
Hmm.
still.
Yeah.
And so it's even harder to make friends because you're not going out and doing as much. And I
Hmm.
feel like even when you do go out and do things, people, don't want to get too close or interact as much. So it's
Hmm.
it's really hard.
Yeah.
Um I also moved to Seattle recently, which if you guys haven't heard of it, there's this thing in Seattle called the Seattle Freeze where people here are
Mhm.
just like they're not friendly, like they're friendly, but
Mm.
they won't talk to you. It's
Interesting.
like a thing. Um
Okay.
so yeah, I think getting to our age, it's even harder. And then there's like Bumble BFF, but like it's the same situation with dating apps and I fucking hate it. You guys, I hate it. I hate it. I tried it.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah,
Uh,
I did try it. Yeah, I tried it back in Illinois.
Mhm.
and I tried it here, and I just, like, I hate small talk. I think that's
Mm.
another reason. I don't know if you're similar, but,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
where
Yeah,
I've always
Mhm.
felt older because I don't know, and, like, I just wanna have a real conversation. I don't wanna be like, "How's the weather? Where do you live?" Like,
Mhm.
I don't fucking care.
I know. I'm sort of like I either you tell me all of your like deep dark secrets or like I'm not interested. I like that's like I can talk about the weather to my cats. Like that's not like an intense conversation. So
Mhm.
like when it comes to like making friends or talking to people like I want to know something real about you. Like it doesn't have to be your
Yeah,
deepest darkest secret, but just like tell me something interesting about you. Tell me about how you think about things. Like what are some books that you love or like if you don't read fine, but like what are other like media that you enjoy? Like I just want to talk about interesting
same.
topics. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
definitely.
And also for the body part you were talking about, like,
Mhm.
1,000%. I also feel like maybe my body is just old. I don't know. We talked about it, I think, in a previous episode, just in case you guys didn't know, we're recording episodes kind of not in order,
Yeah, there's
like
no
a couple
rhyme to
months
this.
before
Yeah.
they actually go up. So I don't remember if we did or not, but I have
Hmm.
had a lot of food allergies that have affected my joints a lot. And one way that I dealt with them and got my joints to be better was working out in the gym and like lifting weights and things like that and building up muscle around the joints. But I think I'm also to the point where, like, if I don't move, I hurt. And if I do move, I
Yeah, totally. It's like
like, I'm
yeah.
taking rowing lessons, and I just had a rowing lesson, which was really fun, but now, like, my hips, my knee, my shoulder hurts, my back hurts a little bit, and I'm like, "Fuck, I
Yeah.
can't do anything."
Yeah, I feel like maybe just as you get older, you realize that the pain is inevitable. Like you're going to feel pain in some
Mhm.
parts of your body probably. And
Yeah.
and it's just for me, I think it's like when we're talking about how like we like to move our bodies, to help kind of with some of that aching. I would rather hurt because it's something I chose to do than hurt because of the
Same.
slow decay of time, you know?
Yes. Exactly. I
Yeah.
would rather be sore because I lifted 200 pounds in the gym
Hmm.
versus being sore because my body's, like, tensed up while I was laying in bed.
Yeah, exactly. My gosh.
Yeah.
I was, in fact, this is so funny. When I was going to bed last night, I was like, you're getting comfy, getting cozy. And I had the craziest toe cramp. It was like my toes did like this thing. If you're listening on
Oh,
audio,
I
my
hate
toes were
that.
like crossed over one another. It was like my middle toes. And it was just like, ah. And I didn't do anything. It's so funny. Like
Mhm.
as you get older, your body will just sort of decide now is the time. Now is the time for pain. And you're like,
Yep.
okay, I just was laying here, but okay.
I hate those kind of cramps because, like, I
Yes.
don't know for you, but for me, I have to get out of
Yeah.
bed and
Yes.
put my foot flat on the
Flat.
ground to, like, stretch it.
Yeah. I was doing the thing last night where I had my foot, I like propped it so that it was flat on the mattress. And I was like, come on, baby, don't make me get out of bed. Like, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm already comfortable. It did work. I didn't have to
Okay,
fully get
that's
out of
good.
bed. But there was a moment there where I was like, oh, I'm going to have to get out of bed. I'm going to have to walk around the room a couple times.
Yeah,
But it worked out. So
yeah.
I feel you on that,
I
though. Yeah.
do feel like we should, like, I know we both feel the same way. Like, obviously, getting older, there are bad things,
Mhm.
but I think both of us, like, appreciate the fact that we have the privilege of getting
Mm.
older
Yes.
and, like, seeing what it's like to be an adult and seeing what it's like to have, like, the job or the money that we want to, like, actually live the life that we want. And, like, I appreciate, even when I am sore, my
Mhm.
body is, like, getting older, and, like, it's such a privilege to get to that point. So
Mhm.
I wanted to also acknowledge that part.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, and I think it's important to if if others haven't thought about it that way, maybe it can help if others are feeling like anxious about getting older, because I think it helps me a lot to think about it in that frame because not everybody gets to be older. So like the fact that you get to experience that at all, yeah, it is a privilege in and of itself. So yeah, such a good point to bring up because it is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you too. So like we're both millennials. I'm kind of like an
Mm-hmm.
elder millennial. I feel like you're a slight older millennial to like maybe middle millennial. Is
I
that
think I'm
right?
like middle.
Like a middle? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been
What's the
thinking,
like millennial range?
yeah, I
I'm
feel
not.
like I'm not 100% sure, but I know that I'm on the older end. I'm not maybe like a geriatric millennial, but like I'm an elder millennial. These are
Okay,
terrible
I think I'm
designations.
pretty sure I'm middle.
I think you're middle because you're a few
Yeah.
years younger than me. So I think you're more
Yeah.
of like a middle millennial.
Okay.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is I've been thinking a lot lately. I'm in my 30s and I've been thinking about all of these benchmarks that, like, when I was growing up, were considered like the things you were supposed to do. And in order
Mm-hmm.
to be like considered a successful adult or like you've become an adult, like these are the things that you're supposed to kind of do to get there. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this a lot lately because I think my life doesn't really look like that model that I think was sort of I grew up with. And I'm curious
Mm-hmm.
about like how you feel about that. Like all of these things that I think for our parents were these measures of success, like getting married by a certain age and like having children and owning a home, just as an example. Um,
Mm-hmm.
are these things that you are like actively working towards? Like, do you consider yourself a successful adult when you've reached these milestones? Are there different milestones that are more important to you? I'm just curious, like, what your relationship to that is, because I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that you're right. Like, I was also raised to think that those are what it means. I don't know if I was raised to think that, but that's what, was
Society.
the what society was
Yeah,
saying,
exactly.
what was success for my parents. And I would say I've always thought that that's what I needed as well. Like I needed to be married, and then when I wasn't married, like in my earlier mid 20s, like I wasn't a good woman or whatever, or like having kids, definitely owning a home, and that's not what I want, nor what I think for me is success.
Mm-hmm.
I actually always wanted kids growing up, but not because like that's what would make me a successful adult. I just think I would be a really good mom and I've wanted to be a mom. And I actually had like if I didn't get married by 35, I would adopt and
Mm-hmm.
like have kids that way because like I wanted to be a mom. And now, especially over the last like 3 or 4 years, that's pretty much like completely changed for me for a lot of reasons. I'm not in a relationship and I don't have any prospects right now. Um,
I love that framing. That you have no prospects. This is like a Jane Austen novel. I have no prospects. I
I
have
mean,
no
like, I'm not
partner.
dating anyone
I have no
either that I
estate.
shut up. I'm not married and I don't have
Yeah,
someone in my life that I see myself marrying within the next couple years.
yeah, hmm,
I mean, that could change, who
for
knows?
sure.
But
Yeah.
um, even though like I had that plan, like I would adopt even if I wasn't married, it is hard, obviously, to have kids when you're not married.
Yeah.
And also up until this year, I could not have afforded to have kids with, I with the salary that I had. But also our world is a hellhole.
What?
I don't want to bring a kid into a world that is dying because of global warming and
Mm,
no one is doing anything about it.
yeah.
The thought of like having a kid and sending them to school
Mm,
is fucking terrifying
yeah.
because like gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
Um so there's all of those reasons. And then also this last year or so, I I experienced significant burnout and I moved to a new city, I have a new job, and not honestly, I like want to be a little bit selfish and just I'm taking rowing lessons like I said.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do that if I want to and it's 3 days a week and like can't do that if you're a single parent really.
Mm-hmm.
Um I want to, go hiking in the mountains and I want to do all of these things for me for the
Mm-hmm.
first time in a long time because I very much care about other people. But so now it's like I want this time for me. So
Yeah.
who knows? Right now, I'm like, I don't think I want them right now, but
Hmm.
who knows? I could meet someone in the next few months that, or the next year. I mean, I'm only 32
You have
also.
time.
Like,
Yeah, you
I
have
want
time.
to like acknowledge what you said at the beginning. Like, we are not saying we're old. We're just saying like we are getting older.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with kids.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, do you want to talk about kids and then we could talk
Yeah.
about the other stuff?
Yeah. Because I mean, I think it's interesting. You're talking about like you, when you were younger, you always kind of knew kids was something you wanted, and then things have kind of changed for you because of societal factors. What's really interesting is that I think I've always been very uncertain as to the question of whether or not I wanted to be a parent. It's
Mhm.
not something that I like. I definitely know people, like you included, who are like, yeah, that's something I really care about. I want to be a parent. I want that experience. And that's not really a feeling that I've ever had, like really, like a really deep longing for that. Not to say that I'm not potentially interested in it, but for me, it's not like it doesn't feel like a really big dream, which I know it is for many people. For me, there have been
Mhm.
other things that have kind of been that dream for me that are not children. One of those is writing, and I would like to be an author one day. And so I've been thinking about the kid question in particular a lot because I'm 35, and as folks know, once you start hitting like 35 and you're going to the gynecologist, they start asking you questions about if you're going to do this thing or not, because you only have a few years technically to where your body can support like a healthy pregnancy potentially. And of course, everybody's different. Every body is different. Some people can have children, in their 40s and there aren't any issues. But, you're kind of rolling the dice at that point if you kind of wait to that, time in your life. So I'm having
Mhm.
these thoughts of like, is this something I want to do? Yes or no? Rather than feeling like I'm on the fence, I want to make a definitive decision kind of either way so that I know I made the choice and I'm comfortable with the choice and I've thought it through. But it's been very hard because it almost doesn't even feel like the question doesn't even feel like, is this something I want or not? The question feels like, does it even make sense in an ethical and moral sense to bring a child into the world? All of the things that you pointed to, thinking
Mhm.
about climate change and the extreme changes that we are going to see in the planet in the next 50 years. Does it make sense to bring a child into that and to force them to live through that? Especially when we're not seeing significant progress toward preventing lots of these tragedies that we're going to see in the next coming decades. And yeah, gun violence. I think a lot about if my husband and I am married. So I guess one benchmark that I've met in my life, according to like the old ways, the old standards, I am married, but we we've talked about this a lot, and I don't know that we would have a child in the US. We've kind of said if we decide we want to be parents, we might like move to Canada or somewhere because we're not far from Canada where we live now. But we don't want to do it here because of the gun violence, because there's not any kind of universal healthcare system in place, because of the fact that there's no real paid leave for families. So if we decide to have a child, I'm going to be like probably sewing myself up on the way to work. Like, it's just there's no time to heal. You know,
Yeah.
it's it's all of these factors that are contributing to this feeling of it's not really even the question of like, do I want kids or no? It's, does it make any sense at all from a logical standpoint to do this?
Mhm.
And because I've never been a person who's felt like this is my dream, it's really hard for me to say, let's do it. Because I think if it were something where it was a dream and I'm like, I'm going to do it no matter what, then like that can help you kind of get through the challenges that you'll face. But because I'm so uncertain about it anyway, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do it. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, it's one of those things I'm keeping the question open because I do have some time still to think about it. I consider like maybe if I can get to a point where I'm an author and I can quit my day job in the next couple years and I would be able to be at home with the child, and yeah, maybe I would have to take a couple years off of writing or not writing as much. But if I were able to be established enough to where like I could carry on for a couple years while like raising a small child before they could go to school, like maybe I could work that out. But there's just like so many things in my life that would have to line up perfectly to even make that
Mhm.
possible. Because it seems impossible is kind of how it feels. but yeah, and it's so interesting, like hearing you even talk about it as somebody who this is something you've wanted, and even you're like, don't know, bro. Seems like it'd be real hard. Because yeah, like people who are parents right now, I'm like, how the fuck are they doing it? I just
Especially like over the last couple of years where they've had to
yes,
have their kids home
while
and
they're
they're
working,
working
yes,
and all of this like horrible shit. And yeah,
yeah,
totally.
it's
It's
so much
hard.
stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to any parents out there. I mean, you're you're doing hard work. You really are.
Seriously.
It's intense. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's so it really makes it hard though, like knowing, and I can only guess at how hard it is. The fact that I'm like, that seems like it's pretty hard. They're probably like living it and like, yeah, you have no idea. Like it's even
Yeah.
worse than you know. Like
Yeah. I'm sure.
yeah. So it makes me really I've been thinking about it a lot, like I said, because of my age, but I'm having a hard time making a decision because it's so complicated.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think also you're married, and that is one of the like things that even I think to this day is like a mark of a successful person,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, and like I'm queer, so it's like when I say I meet someone and be with someone to have kids, like I don't really care what their
Hmm.
gender is. But then there's like all kinds of things that come with that. Like if I
Hmm.
were to end up with a woman or someone who is trans, then it's like you have even more hardships to go through,
Yeah.
of course. And then like if we did want to adopt, then you've got
Yes.
like that. Um and
Hmm.
like I'm kind of like I know I'm young and there's still plenty of time, but I'm kind of like I'm just gonna be like a spinster for
Yeah.
and just like just be like single and living my life and doing
Mhm.
whatever I want to do because honestly, like, it is fun. Obviously, it
Yeah.
would be great to have a partner. I think I just said obviously like 10 times, so do a drinking game if you want to. Um, but like, it would be nice to have a partner and someone to be with, but man, it's a pain too. Trying to
Yeah.
meet someone, going back to what we were saying, trying to
Yeah.
meet someone and like, ugh,
So tricky. Yeah. And
yeah.
you make such a good point too, talking about like your experience as a queer person, because I think when we talk about some of these sort of benchmarks of like what it means to be a successful adult, they're all very heteronormative, right? Like it's like you get married, you're like a man or a woman and you marry another, the other opposite gender. And like you have like 2.5 kids and you have a white picket fence and like you own your home,
Yes.
all of these things that are kind of like carryovers from previous generations. But when you
Mm-hmm.
start to talk to people who belong to the queer community, historically the queer community has been, not, they've been removed from these from these as possibilities. Like heteronormativity, has said that like to get married you have to be a man and a woman. And so where does that leave queer people? Historically they've not been allowed to be married, and only really in
Mm-hmm.
our lifetimes has that become a new law in the US that they can, and people are still fighting it. So there's just like this, even
Yeah,
the
it
idea
might
of,
not be there
yeah, you can't
if
guarantee that it will
who
still
gets their
be.
way.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
just, so it really changes the question too for I think a lot of people if they belong somewhere in the queer community, because marriage just may not be a priority because like previous generations of queer people didn't marry, and they led perfectly meaningful lives with their partners. Like, you don't have to be married in order to have a meaningful partnership. But then it does complicate if you're going to adopt or do all of these other things, but you don't want to like subscribe to marriage. It's yeah, it feels like it makes things so much murkier trying to make those kind of life decisions when you don't know if your rights are going to still be there in a couple years, and you just don't know that you even want to participate in some of these sort of institutions that historically have marginalized you. So I
Hmm.
don't know, it seems like it would be really complicated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some queer people do want that. Like,
Sure.
I, yeah,
Hmm.
we can go down a rabbit hole
I
talking
know.
about rights. That'll get me fired up, and
I
I don't
know.
think we want to do that. So,
We'll save it for another episode.
another, yeah, that'll be another episode.
Yes.
Another mark of like a successful adult for previous generations that I think is like being completely blown out of the water is
Mhm.
owning a home.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was like you had to own a home
Mm-hmm.
You had to have property, like all of that kind of crap. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, the housing market, in case you've been living under a rock, is horrifying,
Also,
horrible.
if you're living under that rock, don't sell that rock. You're going to need that rock to live in.
Honestly, stay there, keep that
Yeah.
property, because out here it's like how homes that were, $100,000, $200,000 are selling for like $1 million fucking dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone is trying to buy a home. And like I know people who a house went on the market, they went to see it that day.
Mm-hmm.
They put a bid on it and someone bid $200,000 or more above asking
Oh my
price,
God.
and they lost the home.
You can't compete with
It's
that.
crazy. So it's like,
Yeah.
who can afford this shit? Nobody.
Nobody.
So it's like we can't own homes.
Mm-hmm.
So our only option is renting.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there are a lot of benefits to renting.
Sure.
I rent. I have a landlord. My freezer was broken. He got someone to come out here and fix it. I didn't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
We my light bulbs, they go out. He comes out and he fixes it.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk for a little while because my throat is.
Yeah, you make such a good point about like the home ownership thing because so my husband and I do own our home. It was only possible because of help with family. It would not have been possible otherwise because while we could afford the mortgage, we definitely could not afford a down payment on our salaries. It was just not a possibility. And I think that that's really common for people in our age bracket. The people who are owning a home usually have help. They have some kind of financial system that they can turn to, whether that's family or something else. So we do own our home. It's really interesting because I think about like the place that we have, it's a condo, and it is not, I don't think of it as being terribly large. And when I think about the like sale price of what we paid for this home, if I were to buy this, if I were to buy a place the same price where I grew up in Kentucky, it would be a huge house. Like it would be significantly bigger. And then here that gets me a condo. And it's so interesting because I think there's lots of folks who they want to buy and they're still buying places that aren't that like our place was not that expensive in terms of like the market because we couldn't afford anything really pricey. But even if you want to buy something like that, it's still really hard because wages have stagnated for years. And so if you're in our age bracket, you never, for many of us, never really had a significant paying job that will help you get the savings to buy a home because home prices have shot up so much. So it's really unequal. And then you're trying to buy.
Especially because like a lot of people don't have that financial backing from
Yes.
parents or family or
Yes.
wherever too.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yep. And so then there's no option to buy if you don't have that support. And then at the same
Mhm.
time, like you have all of these companies who are buying up real estate and they're buying it up either to flip it for a higher price because they know the market's crazy and they can just like put some granite countertops in there and sell it for buku bucks. You got people doing that, or you have businesses like Airbnbs and other like rental companies who are coming in, buying up all of the affordable housing in an area just to turn it into like part-time rental housing to rent out to people. We don't have any regulations in most cities stopping this from happening. So even when people reach the point where they've saved enough or they have family helping them and they can get the down payment and they are ready to buy a house, there is nothing to buy unless you have millions of dollars. And let's be honest, we don't. So it's just like this wild ride. Like the fact that it's still kind of considered, I think like older generations kind of look at our generation and say like, why aren't they buying houses? And it's like, you don't understand. It's not possible for many of us to buy a home. The ones who have had a significant leg up. And I acknowledge that. Like my husband and I had a significant amount of help in order to buy our home. If we did not have that, we would still be renting. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. Rent, the way that I look at it, you're either like paying the bank for your mortgage every month or you're paying a landlord every month. Take your pick.
Mhm.
You don't really like yes, you own it, but like if you don't make your payment, the bank's just going to be like mine and they're going to take it. Like so you don't ever
Yeah.
really even own it unless you like are paying cash. So
Yeah.
it feels like the same thing as renting to me. So when any of my friends who are like, I'm so nervous, like I feel like I'm not doing well enough because I haven't bought my home and I'm renting. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with renting. Nothing wrong with it at all. Like you said, there are advantages.
There's a lot of advantages.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think I want to like double down on that. Like there is nothing wrong with
Mm-hmm.
renting
No.
if you cannot afford a home, if you don't want to own a home, like there's
Mm-hmm.
that's totally fine
Yeah.
too
Some people don't
to
want
not
to.
want to own. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of flexibility in renting too. Like
Mm-hmm.
if for some reason, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but like if for some reason I hate Seattle, there, I can up and move to
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else and rent somewhere there or
Mm-hmm.
move around within this city too. I think
Yeah.
that's something that is nice too, is like if I end up not liking this neighborhood, I can find a different neighborhood to live in.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and like I said, it's really great having a landlord if it's a good landlord. I know there's a lot of issues with landlords out there,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's the good landlord, like I don't have to pay for anything except for my rent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, nothing, no fixing it. And I've had a really great landlord. Like I've been able to get walls painted and stuff. You can't see it in my background, but I have like teal walls in many of my rooms. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah,
it's easy.
it is. And
So yeah.
something else I was thinking about too when you were talking is I just want to also acknowledge that renting is really expensive because I think that there are people
I
who
was gonna
either,
say that too.
yeah, like I don't think the people who don't rent right now probably are not fully cognizant of how expensive it is. The reason
Mm-hmm.
why my husband and I bought our condo was because we were reaching a point where it was going to be cheaper to pay a mortgage than to pay rent. That was the
Mm-hmm.
decision. It wasn't like we were like, yeah, we wanted to buy at some point anyway, but we were not really like planning on doing it. We just did it a couple years ago. It was not, it was like something on like our 5 year plan. It turned into we should probably do this because we just checked the new rents and they are literally the same price as a mortgage and we're going to get
Yep.
priced out of our city. So, and we happened to find a place where we could make the mortgage and everything work so that we were paying roughly what the rent was. And I just checked the other day. I got curious. My husband and I were having dinner, and we were like, I wonder what those apartments we were living in before we moved into this home. I wonder what those apartments are going for right now in terms of rents. And I went and looked them up, and they are more than what we're paying in our mortgage monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we did it at like the perfect time to cut that. But again, inherent in that is a lot of privilege because we knew that we could get help from family to buy at that point. They could help us with a down payment so that we could get in. And not everybody has access to that. So like rents are just so expensive, and they keep
Yep.
going up. And nobody's
Yeah.
doing
And
anything
then
about
if you're
that
in a
either.
big city, it's
Yes.
like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. What's really funny? The city I live in, it doesn't seem like it should be expensive, but it's a college town and it's a very like affluent college town. Some of the like rent prices here, I will see them and I will just gasp because they remind me of rent prices when I lived in Boston. And I'm like, who wants to like pay Boston prices to live in this Midwest city? Like it's like mind-boggling to me. I understand
Yeah.
why. It's an affluent college town and people are into that and they will pay for it. Sure.
I
But
mean,
damn.
understand why and don't understand why because
Yeah,
it's fucking
exactly.
ridiculous.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. But the rents shouldn't be that high anyway, wherever you go. Like,
Nope.
even if you live in Boston or Seattle or wherever, like, you should not have to pay the amount of rent that you have to pay because, like, I think I saw a map recently. They've redone it a few times. That map that goes around periodically that's like, here are all of the places where you could afford, a 1 bedroom apartment on minimum wage, and it's always like there's no states, like none of the
Mm-hmm.
places. And they do
Yep.
update it periodically just to be like, hey, by the way, this hasn't changed. You still cannot afford an apartment on a minimum wage salary. It is
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I laugh because if I don't, I will cry.
yeah, that's right. We
Yeah.
laugh to keep from crying.
Yeah.
So it's
So I've got a question for you. Um,
okay.
so you want to be a full-time author,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously a non-traditional career.
Sure is.
Do you want to talk about that, like
Yes.
expectations of like society for people who like don't want a normal career?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I where I grew up, and this is like society at large plus like the community I grew up in. It's a
Okay.
place where people marry very young and usually have children very young. And I knew like around the time like all these people I knew were getting married and and like starting to like think about children and stuff. I knew then I'm like this isn't my path. Like this isn't my journey. And for a
Mm-hmm.
long time I think I had a lot of um I felt a lot of ways about that where I didn't feel like I fit in because like I had goals that were just very different. I moved to Boston after that and met a lot of people who had similar goals to mine, and that helped a lot because I was like, okay, cool, there are other people who like want to follow creative endeavors, and yes, they might want to get married one day, but they're not like trying to do it today. And so
Mm-hmm.
that helped me a lot like on that journey. But I'm at this point now where I'm 35, my book is almost done. Almost. I'm going to try to finish it this year and get
I
it out
want it.
querying. I know, soon, soon. Um, my hope, I guess, like you talk about, like what are my hopes, what are my expectations? I sort of have like tiered expectations, right? I have like
Okay.
the high level expectation, like the dream would be I finish the book this year. I get an agent pretty quickly. Agent sells it to a publisher. It is like a bestseller. I can quit my job. I could just write books. It's going to be great. Like that's like the dream, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that there's all these factors that I don't control. The only thing I can control is the book that I write. All that other stuff, when I get an agent, whether it sells, the price it sells for, I don't really have a lot of control over those factors. So my
Mm-hmm.
like middle tier expectation is okay, I finish the book, I get an agent, it sells, it does okay. I still have to keep my day job, but I can also write. And maybe after I publish a couple books, then I can be a full time author. So that's like middle of the road. The like, if there's a disaster, I finish the book, I never get an agent, it never publishes, or it publishes and it publishes terribly, and like my career is over.
Don't put
Like
that out into the universe.
disaster.
That's not happening.
It's not gonna happen. But if it does, I'm like, it's fine. I'll find another career. But I think like I'm trying to be realistic about it, but at the same time, because there's so much I don't control, I'm like, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see where I land. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
hopeful that, the first thing I said is what happens, and that I finish it and I get an agent and they're awesome. And, it could be a bestseller and people really love the book and people want to help me write more and like want to read my stuff and people find it cool and fun. Like that would be the dream. So it is weird though, because it's not, for most people, it's not like the traditional career path. And there's so much uncertainty with it. So it would be so much easier if I just worked a 9 to 5 and didn't care about any of this. My life would be so much easier, but I just have these damn dreams.
Darn it.
Darn
You want
it.
more for yourself.
Yes. So it complicates things, but
Yeah.
it's still exciting too because I really can appreciate at this point in my life, talking about getting older, which is the point of this episode. I can appreciate at this point in my life that I'm okay with where I'm at. That there were times in my life when I was worried that like am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And I kind of, as I've grown up, I've realized, okay, there's no like right path, first of all. Like it's just life is the choices you make, and you just try to make the
Mm-hmm.
best choice every time you have a choice, and you'll end up somewhere pretty good, probably. There's things that happen in your life that you can't control, and you have to deal with those, but you just kind of have to roll with it. And so I feel like I'm in a good place now where I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with the book thing. I have lots of hopes that it'll be really good, but even if it's not, I'm prepared to deal with that. Like I'm kind of ready for whatever that next step is. So yeah, I don't know. Non-traditional, but still exciting, terrifying, but also fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. It's everything all rolled up into one.
Yeah. I think that this leads us into another question that I had, which is, we're talking about these expectations or these things that supposedly make you a successful adult.
Mm.
But as a millennial watching like Gen Z,
Mm.
I am pretty obsessed with how they're just like, fuck that to like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, this is not what we want. We want our own ideas and things like that. And so, do
Mhm.
you have any hopes for like the next generation? Maybe like they don't have to have a traditional career. They can
Yeah.
do these different things that they want.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope, I mean, if you ask me like what my just most egregious hope is, my hope is that we can give them a better world. That is a hope I
Yes.
have. I don't know that humanity will get us there in this generation, but I that would be amazing if we can give them a better world than the one that we've had. But as far as like them and the things that they're doing and the choices they're making, I mean, I look at the next generation coming up and I just think like, wow, I want them to just tear it all down. Like, yeah, or just like, and I don't want to put the responsibility on them to have to do that. I want them to do it with us. I want us to like really think about, okay, there's all of these different ways that you can lead a meaningful life, and it doesn't have to look just like this one thing. It can look like all of these different things. And it seems like, Gen Z really gets that. They understand that you don't just have to do things a certain way because it's what everybody says you have to do. And I just hope for them that they can continue to help us build a society where that's more normalized, and we can say, yeah, if you want to be an author and you want to kind of like figure that out, and you're putting off decisions like having children because you want to work on this career goal, that's okay. Also, if you want to get married young and have children, that's okay too. If you don't ever want to be partnered and you want to be single and you want to be a cool ass spinster, that's great too. Like, all of these, yeah, that's right. Live it, live the dream. Like all of it's valid. And so my hope is that they'll be able to help solidify that in a way that I think our generation, we were kind of trying to break a lot of those molds, I think, in part because these benchmarks weren't available to us anymore. And now for Gen Z, they're definitely not available at
Hmm.
all. So they're, I think, innovating kind of new ways of looking at things, which I just appreciate so much. So I don't know. I just want them to succeed. I just want them
Yeah.
to knock all the bad shit down and help us build a better world.
Yeah. I think that I mean, obviously I agree with all of that. Um, I think also like they are they don't give a shit about like they're just like super queer, first of all, which is
Mm-hmm.
great.
It's amazing.
They're
Yeah.
just like, who cares? Like you said, like whether or not they want to be in a relationship, whether or not they want to have kids, they're just doing their own thing. And it's like really exciting to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I also hope that we can give them a better world, but let's be honest, we probably can't, unfortunately. But I don't want them to have to do all the work either, but they're doing the work. They
Mm-hmm.
are making the world the way that they want it to be. They're making it way more open-minded. And anytime there's anything that is like racist or
Mm-hmm.
homophobic or anything like that, they're just like absolutely fucking not.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
obviously, like we're painting a very broad stroke
Sure.
over
Yeah.
this generation. There's assholes in every generation.
There are. Yeah.
But like overwhelmingly, like they are fighting for a better world. And it is really freaking exciting to see.
I know. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. I mean, Gen Z, if you're out there, we're your biggest fans.
We are.
We want to help
Even
you.
though you like to make fun of us for all of the stupid things that we used to do or that we still do,
Yeah. That's
we
okay. They'll
forgive
have their
you.
time because they're going to
Oh,
be
you
hanging out
they
when they're
will.
30, and the next generation's going to be making fun of their, I don't know, middle parts and bucket hats, and they're just going to be like, "How dare you?"
Yeah,
It's the way of the world.
it is. Yeah, we make fun of the generations before us, and that's
Hmm.
just
Yep.
how it happens. Even though like Gen Z is taking things from us that we used to do, and just
Hmm.
like we took things from the generations before
Exactly.
us.
That's
It's
right.
all cyclical.
Hmm.
So I think we're wrapping up here, but I did want to say that we do talk about our old bodies, our aching joints,
Our old aching bodies.
a lot more in our next episode in 2 weeks, which is called Body Check. So make sure that you stay around for that if you are interested. We talk a little bit more about, it's okay that we're getting older in our bodies and we don't need to look young forever. So we
Hmm.
hope that you will come back and listen to that. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Some Worries Pod. If you liked this episode, we'd love it if you gave us a like, rated us 5 stars, subscribed wherever you are listening to us. Do all the things. But until next time, we have been Steph.
And Steph. And now we're off to rub icy hot on our poor aching joints.
Yes.
Please excuse
Yes.
us.
Oh, bye.
Bye.